Hey everybody, this is Strategywizard again. Today I'm going to be doing another video where I talk about the critics of a game that I really like. In this case, it's a Game of Thrones, the board game 2nd edition. BoardGameGeek.com has plenty of people who do not like this game, so there's plenty of material to cover. So, just a quick breakdown. We have, this is the breakdown of the scores. There's 2.2 thousand 10s. I'm one of them. 3.8 thousand 9s, 7.5 thousand 8s, 4.2 thousand 7s, 2.3 thousand 6s, 679 5s, so a big drop off, 418 4s, 188 3s, 107 2s, and 71 1s. Of course, that doesn't mean all those have comments. Some of those are reviews that don't have any comments. It's just the score. But the point is, as you can see, most people have this way up high. But there are some who trail down and don't really care for it so much. We're going to talk about the ones first, see how intense this gets. Okay, so to get started, this guy says, I'm not interested in this type of experience via the board game medium. I do not consider this a board game. Well, it is a board game, and that's it. So he's wrong. Next we have, this game makes me want to start punching people as soon as it hits the table. No other game does that. I'll give you an example of a set of rules that I think feels the same as this game. Each player writes rock, paper, or scissors on a piece of paper. Each player then chooses either the player to his left or to the right to be his target. The pieces of paper are then revealed. Sit around and move a bunch of plastic and cardboard for 20 minutes. If you beat your target, you get 1 point. If someone else targeted you and beats you, you get -1 point. If you get -1 points 2 turns in a row, you lose, but you can't even leave the table. Repeat these steps until all but one person is lost or it has been done 10 times. I basically see how I don't see any comparison between what he said and what a Game of Thrones, the board game, is about. So either this guy put he's reviewing the wrong game, or he is having a little moment of something that I don't quite understand. My gosh, I don't know. Rock, paper, scissors is pure luck. There's very little luck in this game. So right off the bat, he's just completely out of left field. And I mean, maybe this, I don't know, makes me wonder if this person is Liza Aaron. That would make more sense because, yeah, I'm going to leave that alone. I don't get it. Not a war gamer, so this never found its way to the table. This game has found a new home. That's not a reason to give it a 1, so no, you're wrong. That's bad. Okay, random, random, right off the bat, you're wrong. There's almost no randomness to this game, and I've already talked about this in my review with my brother and my cousin. We all explained very clearly how little randomness there is in this game. I'm talking tiny, tiny, tiny little amounts. It's the only randomness that I can think of is the card that you flip over at the beginning of each round, which affects everybody, or the card that comes up with the wildling attack, which also in general affects everybody. So apart from that, it's pretty much just pure skill, negotiation, and strategy, and all that kind of stuff. So it's not random. You're wrong. He says too long. Now that is debatable. I mean, if you don't like a game that takes 3 to 6 hours, yeah, this game probably isn't for you. Boring. Well, that's very subjective, but it's hard for me to understand how you can think this game is boring, and there's so much going on. But he says, I hate big interaction in board games. You don't like big interaction? To me, that's what makes board games fun, is having a lot of interaction. If you play a game where there's almost no interaction, where everyone's kind of doing their own thing, kind of like you're playing solitaire on your side of the table and everyone else is playing solitaire on their side of the table. A good example would be Euro games or worker placement games that feature very little of that. I don't find those to be nearly as enjoyable. And now don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good worker placement game if it's really good, but it'll never be up there with the likes of a Game of Thrones precisely because they lack that player interaction, that social aspect. It's pretty much just, oh, he placed where I was going to play. I guess I'll play somewhere else. And that's pretty much it. That's almost the entire interaction in a lot of those types of games. So I guess this guy likes Euro games a lot. I say Euro, but I'm really specifically talking about whatever I just said. Gosh, I can't even remember what I was talking about. It's so boring. Worker placement. It's just, and I really don't mean that. I mean, I do like some worker placement games, but to say that they don't like big interaction in board games is just mind-blowing to me. How could you not like interaction? I don't know. He says, I like Game of Thrones, the book and the film, but the game is definitely not for me. Well, I'm sorry, it's not. There's too much fun, too much interaction, too much excitement. That's too bad. Okay, this guy says, I hate negotiation, and I really hate deterministic combat. Wow! Oh my gosh, two of the things that I like the most about this game, and yeah, sure, if you don't like negotiation, the game's not for you. If you don't like combat, and he says deterministic, but it's not quite deterministic, because as we talked about in our review, what cards you play can make a difference, and it can swing things one way or the other depending on how it goes. But to a large extent, it is somewhat deterministic. Of course, the fact that there's the ability to support, and other players can come in support and choose a side. Whenever you go into a combat, you might think you know you're going to win, but that could change very quickly. So it's not deterministic in the absolute sense of the term. He says, hence, this is my least favorite board game in existence. Wow! Technically, there's a couple others that are even worse mechanically. Let me just say, there are tons that are worse mechanically, because mechanically this thing is amazing. It's the mechanics work together so well. Now, to say that maybe he doesn't personally like the mechanics, but to say what he's saying, I think is a little extreme. He says, let me go back. Technically, there's a couple others that are even worse mechanically, but this one is insufferably long too, so it wins out as my least favorite. I don't understand, but yes, if you don't like negotiation and if you don't like somewhat deterministic combat, yeah, this game's not for you. If you'd rather roll dice like in Risk to see who wins, more power to you. Go for it. This is not a Game of Thrones board game. The game feels nothing like Game of Thrones. Where's the diplomacy? What do you mean, where's the diplomacy? That's the whole point of the support. You're trying to get people to help you in combat. Now, don't get me wrong. Maybe what he means by diplomacy is something a little more nuanced, maybe something more subtle, where you're maybe making deals with people that go beyond just combat. But to me, there is diplomacy. There's negotiation. In fact, that's a large portion of this game. So unless he just means in a different type of way, I totally disagree that there isn't any. He says, this is an order token game, defies description of the game. Okay, I don't understand. Once again, totally confused. It does feel like Game of Thrones in the sense that you have your troops. You're moving the troops just like in Game of Thrones. The Starks are coming down to wipe out the Lannisters. Guess what? You can do that in this game. You're marching down to take out the Lannisters. Maybe go hit Baratheon if you don't like them because you're not in the mood to like yellow that day. I mean, and the Lannisters, guess what? They want to go take over King's Landing, and they did in the show or in the story. So guess what? They can do the same thing in here. I mean, a lot of what a Game of Thrones is combat, and that's what this is. This is the combat side of the story, with negotiation and being able to make agreements with people and all that kind of stuff. So totally confused. Okay, this gets a lot of Japanese or Chinese symbols that I cannot read, so I can't worry about that. But I probably disagree with him too. He says. This guy says, this is my absolutely most hated game. Second guy who said this is his least favorite. I detest every little piece of it. Well, the pieces are all great, so that's unfortunate. He says, where to even begin? Okay, let's start simple. I can see this is going to be, oh my gosh, this is going to be long. Okay. He says, scales absolutely terribly. Nothing but a full game is completely broken. I totally disagree. I've never played a full game. Didn't think any of them were broken. I mean, in fact, this kind of goes back to the whole Cosmic Encounter comparison, which we were doing in our review of the Game of Thrones. Cosmic Encounter is also very... It's not broken whenever a powerful alien is being played. And the reason why is because the other players are going to change their behavior accordingly. For example, in a 3-player game of Game of Thrones, you might come to the conclusion that Lannister is too powerful because they have a lot of supply areas around them, so they can start building up bigger armies quicker than everyone else. So you might think, oh wow, Lannister are the ones that we have to worry about. They seem like they have an advantage. If you think that, if your games feel like they have the advantage, guess what? Stark can come down the side over there from the ocean and start putting pressure, and Baratheon can focus not on Stark, but focus on the Lannisters. In this game, it's not about being totally fair. In this game, it's about figuring out how to get people to help you the most. So even in a 3-player game, you can totally change the way things are going because you work with the other players to keep anyone from getting too far ahead. That's part of the negotiation aspect, so I totally disagree there. Here's the thing. If you do not have a full game, then some passive, useless, dumb-looking NPCs are placed in replacement. Well, I guess what he means is those little tokens at the bottom that block off where you can go, which is a great thing, because otherwise the people at the bottom of the map would just win because they'd have all these freebies they could take. But nonetheless, he says these are always placed at the bottom of the map. Yeah, of course they are, because that's the way they designed it, so that you start with Stark and you go down the map as you add more players. So obviously they're going to be at the bottom, meaning that the player near these have an incredible advantage. Okay, now he's clearly talking about a 4 or 5 player game. In a 4 or 5 player game, yeah, you can actually start taking over a lot of those, and maybe even all of them, but they take a certain amount of army power to do so. So here's the thing. He's saying they have the advantage because they have more stuff they can take, but at the same time they have to devote their armies to take them. And that takes away their defenses from where Stark and everyone from the north is coming down. So I disagree that gives them a big advantage. It just presents them with an opportunity to take some things in a very deterministic fashion, but doing so at the risk of stretching themselves too thin. So I don't see that as a problem. But let's just keep going. As these useless pieces have no attack capabilities. Yeah, they have no attack capabilities, but they have defensive capabilities, so I don't see your point still. He says, and there is this unit in the game which is massively strong on the offense, but weak in defense. You can kind of see how this does not work one tiny bit. Actually, I know exactly how it works in every single way, because that unit, that's the whole point. Castles are what you're trying to get in this game. You want the castles. The powerful unit being the siege engine, yeah, attack 4 when you attack a castle, which makes sense. A siege engine is made to attack a castle. And guess what? It has defense 0, period. And guess what? That makes sense. If there's a siege engine just sitting there and you're attacking it, it doesn't do anything. So it thematically and logically makes sense. And it makes it to where you have to decide, do I want to spend my recruitment to get something that's very powerful on the offense of a castle, but totally weak in defense? That's a big strategic choice to make, and there's only 2 available. So you really have to decide, is it worth it? And if so, where do I end up putting them? Because you only have 2. So even though they seem really powerful, they're also very weak in another sense, and there's not very many. So I don't see how that's a problem. He says you have to house rule this, otherwise the game is just over before it even begins. I have never seen that happen. And I've played with 5 players, I've played with 4 players, I've played with 3 players, I've played with pretty much every combination other than 6, and I've never felt like it was totally unbalanced. Okay. He says it doesn't help the faction at the top of the map, which is Stark, who is just bloody screwed no matter what house rule, because they have less movement options and have to split their navy into 2 sides, unlike any other faction. No, they don't have to split their navy. They can, but they don't have to. In games we talked about this in our review also. Zach, pretty sure he won with Stark, and did so because he planned around their limitations. Each family has their own limitations, and you have to know what those are and play accordingly. I don't see how that's a problem. Obviously, he hadn't figured out how to do so, but the potential is there, I can assure you. Okay, so, and the randomness. Oh, the randomness. You see, you bid randomly like an idiot for the different powers of the game. Okay, so that he calls random. I don't call that random. Random is rolling dice, and you never have a clue what's going on. The difference is, whenever you're doing secret bidding, you know how much everyone else has to bid, but you don't know how much they're going to bid, and that's where the mind game comes in. It's not random. It's like a bluffing game of, do I want it? Should I try to make people think I'm going to go bid high so they bid high, but really I bid low so they waste all their tokens? How is that random? That's not random. That's strategy. Okay, he says, these bids show up randomly during the game. Now that is random because those are the cards that come up at the beginning, but it affects everybody. So that randomness, it's not something that picks on any one person. It's something that just affects everyone, and you deal with it. He says, so these bids show up randomly during the game. So sometimes it was good you used all your money to get the most power, and other times the game goes, lols, we vote again, in just one measly round. Congrats, you just lost everything. Now I'll give him this much. That is true. It is theoretically possible you could have bid, and if the next card, if you shuffled in such a way that the next card is going to do the same thing, yeah, that's true. But that's part of the strategy. You know that's a possibility, so you try to keep from using up too much of your power unless you need to do something to make a killer move. So that just is another part of the whole thing. That you never know how that's going to happen, and again, it affects everyone. So if everybody bid, everyone's in the same boat. But if someone was smart enough to conserve, going, you know what, I'm going to save them for later, they get the benefits. So it's not something that makes it totally random in a bad way. It's something you have to plan for. It's something you know could happen, and knowing that, you have to decide, is it worth spending all my power tokens now, or should I save them? Same thing can happen with the wildlings. The wildlings can attack, and you might bid tons on that, and then right after that, you got to bid on the influence tokens for the Iron Throne, the Sword, and the Raven, and you may have blown all your stuff trying to win on the wildling track, and that's just part of the game. That's not a problem of just pure randomness. That's just something that you know there's this many cards, you know there's a chance it could be coming up. What do? I don't see how that's a big problem, so I totally disagree there. One time I wanted to think long term, so I wanted to get even more income in the second round by sacrificing some in the first. Now he says income, I guess he means the power tokens. But then the game went LOL, screw you, and had us adjust to these things only in the first round. Because, of course, this is decided randomly, too. I don't really know what he means there, and he's got so much more to say. I'm not going to try to think about it so much right now. He says, of course, there was no adjustment in forever after this, so I just sit around forever with no resources. Maybe by money he means food. Maybe he means on the food track. I don't know. Supply track? I don't know. Until the game mercilessly let me continue playing it halfway through. A good fun 3 hours. Of course, at this point, it was already over, and chance of victory has long since escaped my grasp. But that's okay, because the game only takes half a day to complete anyway. Now, here's the thing. That's, from what I can tell, this is one of those cases where if you want to prepare for supply, you can do so. People might try to take it from you, but that's because it's a valuable resource. I don't see how that's a problem. That's realistic. It's thematic. People want to take areas where they can grow good food so that they can supply their armies. That just makes sense. So I don't see how that's a problem, because you should be protecting it. You shouldn't just let it be taken. So another great example is that one of the factions starts with a throne power or whatever. It's thankfully been a while since I played this monstrosity. And if bidding for powers comes up in the very first round, no one, first of all, it can't happen in the first round. You don't turn over cards in the first round. You start in the second to start turning over cards. So it can't happen in the first round. He might have messed that up. He says, and if bidding for powers comes up in the very first round, no one has any real money, and ties are broken by the throne power. Har har! Guess who now has the highest power in 3 areas? Those dudes. The fact that they can get a lead this early for no reason then it's just one of those draws, yo. Just reeks of imbalance in this game. Well, in this case, he read the instructions wrong, and maybe that's why he doesn't like this game altogether. Maybe all this has to do with not understanding the rules exactly, because that would be a bummer. If that's the way it worked, that would be devastating, and it would probably ruin my opinion of the game too. So I will give him that. If he misunderstood, that would be devastating. But that's not right, just for you viewers. You don't turn over the cards at first precisely so everyone can start doing things. They can try to take some areas with more supply in case a supply update card comes up. Or you can try to get things that, get more power tokens precisely for the bidding that'll be coming up. So that's something that he just messed up. And I understand sometimes you make mistakes, so that's no big deal. That's just something, unfortunately, he didn't know. Then he says, this game is all about staying friends with folks, and it's all decided by having the most castles at the end. Well, this usually just leads to the most passive sit on your rear end, because otherwise you are going to get a mortal enemy, which will cost you the gameplay. Because there is no other real reason to attack one dude over another. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of reasons to attack someone, because they have land that you want badly. And that's usually how it goes. Someone has a castle that's not only a double castle, which means you can muster more troops there, but it might have a supply and a power token there. Guess what? That's what you want to attack. That's kind of logical. If someone has something where they just have one power crown icon on their territory, guess what? You're probably not going to want to go for that one. I don't see how that's a big deal. That's just logic. There are reasons to decide who you fight. It's not like it's just... Okay. He says, and then for the final round, everyone just groups up their dudes and tries to capture as many castles as possible in the final round. Well, of course they do. Why wouldn't they? Hoping that the others decide to go a route that spares your castles. If they do, congrats, you won. Well, yeah, I don't understand how that's a problem. I'm confused. What an accomplishment after half a day of sitting around having random event cards tell you how well you are doing. Whew. That's, okay. I'm sorry, I disagree. Hate. It's so bad. I haven't even scratched the surface of the many flaws in this game. I would rather play Risk than this, because at least in Risk there is no illusion of it being good and no massive random balancement during the game. At least Risk doesn't go, screw you, I'm taking all your stuff, right in the middle or beginning or end of the game. The only good thing I can say is that I guess it's thematic and looks good, because just like the TV show, you get to watch all the things you fought for die for no reason. Okay, well, all I can say is, if somebody thinks that Risk is better than this, I don't even need to talk to them or address what they have to say, so I'm moving on. I was looking forward to this just from the general praise I'd heard from friends and from Board Game Geek. Unfortunately, I'd picked the Lannisters without really understanding their predicament of being the worst faction to start off with. I don't know why they're the worst. Maybe in a 6-player game, maybe they're worse. I mean, I don't know. To me, Lannister has always seemed like the more powerful, but obviously this guy's experience is different. Before the game even started, one of the players harped on for about 5 minutes as to why my faction was the worst. What preceded was nothing short of bemusement. A few turns in, everyone realized I was about to win, before even I knew I was about to win. I had stumbled my way into the headlights of all the other players. Well, that sounds to me like they must not be the worst, but okay, maybe he'll explain. The players then planned to attack me on multiple fronts, which was expected. What was not expected was an attack from a player who I believed could not reach me. I had misread the board state due to some devious placement of ships on the opposite side of the board. I was not impressed. Because you didn't read the board right? I don't get it. Board games, to me, are a competition in decision making. If I'm stuck gaming with people who believe that you need to win at all costs, then that's the day I quit the hobby for good. As to whether I'll play this game again, I doubt it. Now, first of all, it seems to me that the problem is his friends, not the game, because why would he bring up the whole thing about if people want to win at all costs, that's a problem? I mean, I think he just doesn't like his gaming friends. I think his gaming friends ruined his opinion of this game. So, sorry, I think you should be putting this review on your friends' Facebook pages and give them a 1-star review. Maybe that's what you should be doing. But he says, the map is busy. The components are clumsy. I don't agree with that. The army's defending territories are pretty big and obscure the board. Well, move the pieces out of the way if you want to see what's on the dadgum territory. The cards are numerous. What are you talking about? It says, so you need to learn all the cards before you can even successfully navigate the mire of combat. Okay, he must mean the house cards. There's a lot of, everyone has a 4, gosh, I can't remember anymore. Is it a 4, a 3, 2 2s, 2 1s, and a 0, something like that? I mean, yeah, they're all different, have different powers. Now, personally, we made a cheat sheet that shows what all the powers are, and that way we can pass it on and we can all know. But it's not that big of a deal, in my opinion, because technically, I think it should be open information. So as far as I'm concerned, you should be able to let someone look at your hand to see what you have left, because otherwise, players who know the game better just automatically have the advantage. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, that's to me that is what makes the game good. Everyone's different in their cards, which makes the combat more interesting. I like that. He doesn't. Okay, so he says the map is busy. Blah, blah, blah. So you need to learn all the cards, and the gameplay isn't that compelling. Why bother? Well, it is compelling to me. I realized from this experience that I really dislike heavy negotiation games. Okay, again, if you don't like negotiation, sure, don't get this game. I agree with that. Watching players plead with each, make snide remarks, or cudgel weaker players into bad positions is not my idea of entertainment. It's like being around a whole bunch of marketers trying to sell you things that you're not interested in. That's pretty much my idea of hell. Well, there you go. If you don't like negotiation and you don't like the fact that the social elements of the table can affect things, it's not for you. Trust me. But that happens to be one of my favorite mechanics in the game, so I love it. Okay, this guy says, the 4-player version of this game is completely unbalanced. Apparently unplay-tested garbage. Now, I disagree with that, because I've played that way and it didn't seem totally ridiculous to me. It looks like the 5-player will be as well, though I haven't tried it yet. To publish a 3 to 6 player game that simply doesn't work with fewer than 6, in large part due to some stupid changes, addition of several neutral castles, strongholds in one part of the board, only really accessible to 1 or 2 players, the inclusion of siege engines that can be used in that part of the board, is simply unacceptable. Well, again, I haven't noticed that. I'm not going to say that it doesn't exist, because just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean that it's not something that's in the game, but having not experienced it, I hesitate to believe or take that so seriously. Y'all can leave in the comments if you've experienced something similar. but I have not. Okay, we're going to do a few twos, and then I think, my gosh, I'm going to let this go, because some of those people, they were long-winded, and they hated the game so much that it's almost demoralizing. So, this is the first two. I dislike this game very much. Yeah, I kind of figured whenever I saw your two. There is no incentive to alliances. That's not true. The resource and troops acquisition is random. The resource and troops acquisition is random. It's random in the sense that you have mustering cards and supply cards. They turn up randomly. You don't know what's going to happen. However, you can use your Consolidate Power token with the star to muster. So it's not like you can't ever muster apart from a card coming up. Except for, I will admit, in the higher player counts, yes, some people can't play star tokens. So some people cannot muster at the beginning. However, that being said, I've never noticed that being a crippling issue, and the reason why is because those people who aren't mustering, they're going to be using their power tokens to be focusing on getting more power so they can get the Raven token later because they see how powerful it is to have. So I don't think it's nearly as big of a deal as this guy's making it out to be. You can... the game is designed very balanced, in my opinion, to where no matter what your starting position, you have the potential to overcome. I've always seen it that way, but obviously not everyone agrees. He says, the events can screw your strategy, and in the end, the players block each other till a dance of chairs ends, giving the game to the one that no one can block after so much blocks happened. Never had a good experience playing this one, and I tried. Also, not really a fan of the series or books, so it does not help. Well, I can't really agree with you too much there, so there. That's that. Okay, this guy, oh my gosh, this is going to be my last one, because this guy has a lot to say too. Played this for the first time the other night, and it will hopefully be my last. This game hits on practically every hallmark of an unpleasant game experience. Let's keep a tally, shall we? Yes, let's. I want to hear this. He says, incredibly steep learning curve, an overly complex rule system making it overwhelmingly unfriendly to beginners and difficult for veterans to explain adequately. Check. Okay, I agree with him that there's a lot of rules. Complicated, sure, I agree, but that doesn't bother me. It's just one of those things you have an investment to make to really enjoy it. That does not bother me. I like it. He says, over an hour just to take the first game turn, mostly due to rules explanation. Check. He says check on everything. I'm not going to say all his checks. I would not say it's over an hour to make the first turn, even with rules explanations, unless you're just teaching, unless you're counting the whole teaching in that 1 hour. But no, I don't agree with that. The need to know and understand every facet of the game's minutiae from the very first turn in order to properly execute any sort of competent strategy. I don't agree with that. Although it is important to understand the basics, which is how important are power tokens? How important is it to get some territories with supplies so you can have bigger armies? How important is it to start a naval force if you want to use that in your game, your strategy? But those aren't the minutiae. I don't think that's such a big deal. Those are kind of obvious things. So I think maybe this guy's just not such a fan of more complex strategy games, and that's just the way it is. Cumbersome combat and unit instruction mechanic. Don't agree with that. In fact, the combat is so unbelievably simple and streamlined, it blows my mind. He says imbalanced, very imbalanced factions. I don't agree with that. He says not well designed to be played with anything less than the maximum amount of players. I disagree with that. Game length should be expected to exceed 5 hours. I wouldn't say expected, but it could. Horrible downtime between turns. It could be if you have AP prone people. I'll agree with that. A faux perfect information game, which actually has an alarming amount of hidden information and luck via card abilities, game events, action limitations, etc. Well, I would say that's actually the beauty of it. It's not quite perfect, and you don't want it to be perfect, but there's a lot of information. There's most of the information. Whenever combat happens, you pretty much know all the information. You know what cards they have in their hand. You know what cards you have in your hand. There's somebody that might be supporting, and they're going to decide which side they're going to join. I don't see how it's that bad, so I disagree. Certain players never interacting with one another in a 4+ hour game due to mechanics and layout. Well, in the sense that Martell is way down south. They may not, if you're playing a 6-player game, Martell will probably never interact with Stark unless somehow their navy meets on the side. But that's not a flaw. That's just logistically the way the game is set up. I don't get it. He says, the most clear and viable strategy, really the only strategy it seems, being to lay low and avoid conflict and interaction, hoping for other players to beat each other up. I don't agree with that because if you lay low too much, you're just going to lose. Take that style of gameplay being the overwhelming draw. It's not really take that, it's combat. Unless you think risk is take that, but it's just you're trying to take stuff, and other people have what you want, so you try to take it, but you're not doing. I don't know. Due to previous point, the overwhelming feeling everyone experiences is animosity on a night that is supposed to be fun. I definitely don't agree with that. I've never experienced that once. Irrelevant theme in a game where bad game mechanics exist in order to facilitate the supposed theme. I don't know what you mean. You didn't give me examples, so I have to assume you're wrong. Uninteresting decisions. Really? Uninteresting decisions. Well, I'm interested in every decision, so I totally disagree. Forced actions, often with no meaning. What do you mean by forced actions? The fact that you have to place order, you do have to play order tokens on every single place you have units, even if you're not going to use it, but that's just to make it to where no one knows what's going on. I mean, that's a good thing. Little to no tactical opportunities. Well, I totally disagree with that. How in the world are there no tactical opportunities? That is ridiculous. Potential for players to be effectively eliminated in the first turn or so. Huh? That is literally impossible. You can't even get into combat in the first turn. Well, if you're playing with 6 players or 5, there are some combats that could happen with certain people. But to say that you could be eliminated, I literally don't see how that's at all possible. Unless maybe if you did something that made absolutely no sense with the intention of dying and you told someone, hey, I'm going to do something retarded, you want to come and kill me in the process? I don't see how that could possibly happen. Okay. He says, heavy dose of king making due to the previous point. To disagree. Runaway leader problems, which can only be resolved by people ganging up on the leader. Yeah, pretty much. There could be a runaway leader if you let them just take everything, and then, yeah, you're going to be trying to stop them in the process. I don't see how that's a problem. That's just called logical strategy. I mean, why would you not do that? Why would you just let the person who's winning just keep on winning more? Whatever. He says, does not allow nor encourage creative paths to victory. Disagree. No incentive for conflict other than a lack of anything better to do. What do you mean? The incentive is to win. You're trying to get castles. That's why you have conflict, so that you can take territories that boost your armies. You have more supply or more power tokens so you can get more stuff, or castles so you can win. What do you mean because there's nothing better to do? That is the thing to do. I don't even understand that. Impressively shallow gameplay considering time commitment required. Not shallow at all. Totally deep, so I disagree. Nothing inherently fun in the primary game mechanic. Selecting action tokens. No, selecting action tokens to me. Now, obviously some people may disagree like this guy does, but to me, the secret action tokens is the thing that makes this game shine. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Whenever I saw that, I thought, wow, why do more games not have this mechanic? This guy is just, we're on 2 totally different wavelengths. This game was an absolute chore in all the negative ways the word chore implies. It wasn't fun. It was long. It was arduous. And in the end, it felt like all the back and forth and give and take mattered for naught. Essentially, we could have accomplished the same experience had we just sat around a table and argued over who we wanted to win. Person 1, I think person 5 should win. Person 2, but I'm about to win. Person 1, yeah, but she almost quit earlier, and if she won now, that would be cool. Person 3, yeah, and I'm not going to win anyway, and I don't want you to win, so I'll just say let's let person 5 win. Person 4, yeah, person 5 wins. Person 2, darn. Person 5, woot! And that's not at all how it goes. Not even remotely. So, I'm not going to even though I'm almost tempted to go do more, I can't because I'm just going to say this. This guy says, worst game I've played. Oh my gosh. So many people say this is the worst game they've played, and it's a 10 for me. What does that tell you about how different gamers can be? We all have different tastes. Your tastes are different than mine, I'm sure. So please leave down in the comments what you think. Do you think this is the worst game ever, or do you think it's the mediocrest game ever? Is it the... Gosh. Woo! I don't know. The point is, let me know in the comments. What do you think? Just tell me something. And I'm going to try to recover from this fascinating reading. And, yeah. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, subscribe if you don't mind. I'd appreciate it. But I'm going to take a break and cool off. Thank you all very much for watching. Bye.